Heyo, Tabletop Sports fans. This is Bob from Bob's Tabletop Sports. We have something special for you today. We're going to be talking about card creation. Now, if you remember the last time we did a video on card creation, we did one for Hockey Blast, a Play Games product. And in that video, we used a program called Visio to make the cards. If you remember the process that we used during that video, you'll remember how labor intensive it was because we had to go in and actually change values for each individual player. So this is something that we want to change. So I have some good news for you here today. This is the tool I have been using now for quite a bit of time. It is called Affinity Publisher. Affinity Publisher is part of a suite of 3 different products offered by Affinity. They also have Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer. These are all graphics tools that can help you with different graphical and design type projects. So Affinity Publisher is what we'll be using for this today. Affinity Publisher, by the way, if you want to purchase it, is $50. Which in the world of any publishing software, any photo software, any design software, this is a steal. You can get all 3 of them for $150, never pay another dime, and they give you free updates. They just released a brand new one, packed with new features. One of the features we'll be talking about today was released in 2 updates ago, which is the data merge feature, which we'll be using probably in the second and or third video in this series. This will be a series of videos actually, because we're going to be going through my entire workflow on how I create cards. Okay, so I know a lot of you are pretty excited about this. I get a lot of questions about this. I was just at play.con in Denver, Colorado last week, and there was a lot of questions there about card creation as well. A lot of people talking about Affinity Publisher, a lot of people asking for tips about it and how to use it. So that said, we have Affinity Publisher here on the desktop right here. A couple things that this video won't do. This is not a tutorial on how to use Affinity Publisher. If you get this tool, I highly recommend before going through and trying to replicate the things that I do in this video, learn the tool. Okay? There are a lot of great videos out there on how to use this tool and the different things that you can do with it. Affinity offers a workbook, a really good workbook for $50, which goes through a lot of the details about how to use this. It's a really nice book too. A lot of color illustrations in there and a lot of explanation on how to do different tasks with it. You'll learn a lot just by going those different things. The other thing I find is just going through and trial and error, right? What does this button do? What does that button do? And all of a sudden you start learning all sorts of new things. So the stuff I'm going to show you today, this card creation workflow that I do, is actually something that has been refined over the past 1.5 or 2 years since I've been starting to use Affinity Publisher. It's come from a lot of trial and error. It's come from talking to other people who use this product. Some of the people in my gaming group, sports board gaming group, they are also using this tool now, and we talk a lot about different things that we're doing on that. I get a lot of great ideas from them. So this is kind of a culmination of this, and so I'm passing this along to all of you so you can see what my workflow is, and then you can start replicating pieces of that and start coming up with your own workflow. Okay. All right, and we're going to do a really simple card design here. I know that some of you have seen some of my card designs and you're like, wow, that's really cool. I'm going to do a really simple card design, but I think in doing that simple card design, I'm going to pass along some things that are going to really help you take your cards to the next level, even if we aren't adding color or anything into this. We're going to do a standard black and white with some gray in there, and that's it. We're not going to do anything off the wall. All right, that said, let's actually get into this. So as I said before, this tool makes making cards a lot easier. Okay, and one of those things that does that is a feature called data merge. What this allows us to do is we design our card one time. We design one card. Okay, that's going to be our first part of our workflow, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to design that one card. We can then drop that one card into a data merge grid, and we can take data from like an Excel spreadsheet, drop it in there, and it will automatically populate all of our cards for us. And then the last step would be doing any post-processing work that we might need to do on it. And that's it. And as you will see here in this video will probably be about an hour long today, where we're going to design the initial card. We're going to have another video about creating the data worksheet that we're going to use, and then we're going to use the data merge tool. Doing the data merge tool is going to take like a minute to do the whole process once we get it all set up. Okay, it's going to be very simple, very easy to do. Once we do that, then we're done. We're pretty much done. You do some little post-processing work. I can usually do a card set in a couple days, from concept to actually getting it fleshed out and getting it to where I'm really, really super happy with the card, and then doing the actual merge and everything else. The biggest job I think now for me is the Excel spreadsheet, to be honest, and gathering that data. But we'll talk about that in another video. So let's get started. Again, we have Affinity Publisher here open. I'm using this on a Mac, but you can use this in Windows as well. There's a Windows version. A lot of the stuff we're going to be doing in here is going to be the exact same process in Windows. There's very little difference between the two products. I will note to you, if you are a dual user of operating systems, like I have a laptop that runs on Windows and I have a desktop that runs on the Mac operating system, you have to buy two different versions of this, unfortunately. So I ended up paying $150 for both versions of my two Affinity publishers. Actually, I paid less because I got it under a sale that they ran recently for COVID relief. Essentially, they cut their prices in half. So I did pay the licensing fee twice for all of my products, for all three of the products, the photo, the designer, and this. So I use all of them. But anyways, so this is on a Mac. There won't be too much difference in the workflow here at all. I don't think there really is any. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to do File New, of course. We're going to start a new document. So now when we start this new document, there are a few things that we have to set. First of all, we have to set the paper size. And paper size, we're going to go with letter. Okay. When Keith at Play Games does their stuff, they do it on a cardstock that has perforations on it, perforation lines. The perforation lines for History Maker Baseball run all the way up to the edges on the top and bottom of a landscape page, and then they have tabs on the side that get pulled off that are about a half an inch, I think, around somewhere around there. That said, I actually do own some of that perforated stock, and I can print that, but my printer does not like it. So I've been going with my standard, which is I just print on cardstock, cut them out. Because I do that, I can use a little bit more of the paper and kind of tweak things a little bit more. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But let's take a look at some of these settings. Like I said, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to use this product, so I'm going to tell you what settings I use. I'm not going to tell you exactly why on all of these things. But we want to go with the horizontal layout here instead of like a landscape orientation. This image placement policy, we want to set this to prefer embedded. That means if we do use any images, they're going to be embedded in the saved file, not just linked, so you don't have to include all the images as well when you send this to somebody else. Don't worry about default master, number of pages. Facing pages, I always turn this off. We don't use that. That's used if you're doing like magazine spreads, things like that. We don't really care about that. I normally leave the color format stuff alone. It usually comes out pretty good. I'm not enough of a expert on desktop publishing and stuff like that to know maybe a better setting for this. If you do, leave a comment leave a comment down below. I'll read it, and maybe I can set this to a better value than what we have here. The one thing I don't like about this is web coded. This is not going to be for a website or anything like that. We're actually using this for a print type thing, so we may want to use more of a print setting in here. There's probably some better things that we could use for that, like a coded ISO setting or something like that. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'll leave this as is. It usually turns out pretty good this way. Again, this is not for anything professional. This is for home use, and I really don't care. As long as it looks good to me, that's all I really care about. Include margins. Yes, we're going to leave this checked. We'll come back to this in a second. You'll notice the bottom here is called bleed. We're going to explain a little bit thing here about bleed. Bleed is set normally on printers. Every printer usually has a bleed of about 1/8 of an inch, or 0.125 inches. That is the amount that the printer just physically can't print on the page. There's just no way. I'd say a majority of all printers out there have that same bleed of about 1.125. That's why they have it set as a default in here. And this is good to set if you just want to make sure that it gets excluded from the page and you can't actually do anything on it. But the way I prefer to do this, I prefer to do this a little bit different. I actually set these to 0. I don't really care about bleed. I'm going to do it in margin instead. So I'll actually set the margins instead to 0.125. And I like the look of working with this better. It just works better with my workflow. For you, it might work better the other way. Doesn't matter. Now, the reason I'm saying this all to 0.125 all the way around is I want my stuff to go all the way out to the bleed for my cards. That means my cards, for me, the way I print them out on my paper, I want them to go all the way to the bleed. That means I get as big of cards as possible. They'll be a little bit shorter than the standard History Maker baseball cards, but they're going to be a little bit wider too. Okay, if that makes any sense. Okay, not by much. It's going to be very unnoticeable unless you actually put two cards on top of each other and look at them that way. The other thing with this is that not all printers will print all the lines out there, so I put lines around each card, so I have cut lines essentially, and we can cut them. The one thing that happens with this a lot is where the outside lines won't get printed. Like if I send these out to Kinko or Office Depot or something and say, here, print this file for me, a lot of times they'll come back without that outside line on there, so they won't print that. So if that's the case, set this a little bit higher, maybe to 0.15 inches around, and then make your cards that way. My printer at home will actually print everything out to 0.125 just fine, so I just leave it at that. All right. So that said, that's enough. We can hit create here at this point. So we're going to hit create. So now we're left with a page. You can see here, here's our margin. This is technically, this stuff on here, again, like I said, this is the bleed on the paper. If we had set the bleed, we wouldn't see that at all. We'd just see whatever the margin was. So it doesn't matter at this point. All right. Now, we need to do our initial card. Okay, so when you get History Maker baseball cards, you get a set. You'll notice that they are printed usually in 3 rows on the paper of 6 columns, total of 18 cards. So we need to figure out what size these cards need to be. Now we could go through and do this mathematically and all that and take a lot of time and figure that out, and that's okay, I don't want to do that. Instead, let's do this the easy way. So the easy way to do this is to do something like this. We're going to actually use our data merge feature a little bit early and get rid of it. Then we'll talk about it in like the 3rd video again. But we're going to use it now. We're going to use this data merge layout tool. This is going to help us get our initial layout and figure out how big those cards are going to be. And then we'll just get rid of it. We'll design our initial card, and then that will be that. So we're going to use that data merge layout tool. We're going to click on that in this toolbar on the side here. And we're just going to click and drag from the top all the way down to the bottom, and we're respecting those margins again so we don't go out of our bleed space. Okay? As you can see here, now we have a 4x4 grid. There are some games that you may do cards that are this size. Okay? And that's perfectly fine. Okay? But In this case, I think we want to do something a little bit different. Instead, we're going to change this row and columns value here. So you can see up top here are some properties for this data grid. We have things like cell height, cell width, preserve cell size. We can click that if we want there. Gutter, we can actually set gutters in between each cell if we wanted to. We're not going to do that in this case. We can set our columns and rows, which we'll be doing here in a second. Record offset, record advance, and record origin. This is something that we will be looking at later when we talk about the actual data merge process. So we don't need to worry about that right now. All right. So we're going to change this. We're going to set this to add an additional row. So now we have 3 rows. We're going to add a bunch of columns here, so we get up to 6 columns. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom, there we go. So each one of these cells is the size that we need for a card. So now we're just going to create our template for our card. And to do that is very simple. We're going to take our rectangle tool. We're going to draw a little rectangle here in the middle. You can see that it just copied to every single cell here. That's part of the data merge functionality. Okay. What we're going to then do is we're going to click on this little arrow tool, this move tool. We're going to start moving these until we get everything square with each side. Now this bottom one is going to be a little bit of a pain because it's not going to want to get that exact size. Okay, so you got to kind of fiddle with it, kind of eyeball it a little bit, and get it right. Okay, so we're about right there. All right, so we have a card in there now. This is great, but now we have a bunch of cards in here, and we want to make just one template. So we don't really care about this data merge grid right now. We're going to actually get rid of it for now. So on this side here, if it's not already selected, there is a layers panel. Okay, layers are basically going to deal with the layers of the actual document. Think of, you have something on top of something else, and every object is going to be somewhere in that stack. Okay. Currently, right now, the data, this rectangle is part of that data merge layout. Okay. So we want to change that. We actually want to drag that out. And if we drag that out, now it's no longer part of the data merge grid here. It's its own thing. And then we can just go to and select the data merge, and then we can delete it. That gets rid of it completely. It's gone. I like usually then, once I've done that, just drag this out just a little bit. It's out on its own. We're going to do a little bit of zoom here. We're going to zoom this up to about 300%. And we're going to use this here. This navigator thing here will help you do the zoom, and it'll help you set where your page is looking at. So you can see I can drag this rectangle around, and I can move this around. I'm actually going to drop this down just a little bit more. I'm actually going to set a custom value to 250. That should be good. All right, that's our card. Okay, so that's our card template, our individual card. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, now we need to change a few things. We don't want our cards to be all gray like this one here. This one is gray. It has no border on it. We want borders on it because we want to have cut lines. Okay, so we'll talk about that here in a second. Let's talk about cut lines. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at color. So you can see here at the top, where my mouse pointer is right now, at the very top right, we have a circle, a filled circle, and then also behind it we have a circle with a no inside into it, so empty circle. Okay, that empty circle will, if we set the color on that, that is going to set the color for the borders. Okay, the other one is going to set the background color. All right, now also we need to look at the stroke. Stroke is how wide that border is, how many pixels that border is. Right now it's set to 0, so we have no border there. So we need to actually change that. We're going to change that to about 0.3, 0.4-ish. We want a nice, good, thick cut line, but we don't want to make it too big. Okay, so we have a black cut line here. Now, black cut lines are great because they're really easy to see, and if you're cutting a bunch of stuff, it's really easy to see what you're cutting. The problem with black cut lines is if you miss just by a little bit, it's very visible. You'll see on the card, you'll see a big black line on the side of the card, and you're like, oh, that looks really ugly, and then you got to sit there and go trim it, and it's like, ugh, too much work. Okay, so we're going to change the color of that border. And so we can go here, and so as you can see here, we have, again, this is the border color. So you should know this if you've gone through the documentation and started learning how to do this. You should know how to set colors. We're going to set this to a gray, okay? And then the foreground, so we click on that, we'll get to the foreground. We're going to do white, just bog standard white, okay? So here we go. We have a nice gray gray line, white background. This is our standard card. Our cut lines are going to be a lighter color of gray, which means they're going to be a little faint. They're going to be a little hard to see. So when you're using your cutting tool, you have to have good lighting to do that cutting. But the thing is if you miss, there's not going to be any big deal on that, okay? Because you always have a little gray line on the side, and it won't really be all that noticeable unless you're like filming it or something like that. Then you may want to trim it a bit. But sorry, I'm taking a drink here. Just hang on 1 second. Okay, so we have our basic outline for our card. This is great. So now what we want to do is we want to start looking at just how we can have a general overview of what the card's going to look like, right? So we have a few things that we know they're going to be on the card, okay? One of the things we may have at the top here, we'll just do a copy and paste of this element basically, but we're going to use these frame texts here. That's why we just dragged out here, frame text tool. We can actually put text in here. So you can say in here something like nickname or city name. Actually, we'll just city name. Right, so we might want to have the city name of whatever baseball team it is, like Cincinnati or whatever. Don't worry about the fonts yet. We'll get to that in a moment, okay? But we'll do some Control-C in here and Control-V. Actually, in the Mac, it's Command-X and Command-V. Or, yeah. Oops. Yeah, Command-C, Command-V. All right, so we're going to copy this. We'll put this down here, and we probably want a team nickname. Right? And, let's see, what else do we want? Well, let's do a, we need a player name, right? Their first name. We'll just use first. I like doing it this way, just saying first, and then on the second one saying actually last name. So go in here, we'll do this, and then last name. And I always like having the first name be upper lowercase, and then the last name being in all uppercase. Just the way I like to do it. You don't have to do it that way. And we're going to have like the position in here as well. Yeah. Now the other things we might have is lefty-righty splits, things like that, or lefty-righty, whether or not they throw left or whether they bat left or bat right, whatever. We'll have some space for that. We'll talk about that in a second. We're also going to need a place for their skills, right? So each player has skills. Let's do that next. So how do we do that? We're going to need spaces for at least 6 skills for batting, because a player can be all at the same time. They could be a hero, a champion, a slugger, a home run king, an eager, and a whiffer. All at the same time. That's 6 different things. Okay. Technically, they could also have a delta quality, but our pitchers typically don't have a delta rating. So where we have the pitcher grid, we can put the delta rating in there instead. But anyways, let's do this. We're going to use what's called a table tool. Okay. So we're going to select that table tool. We're going to drag a table out here real quick. So we're going to drag this out. We got 6 rows in there right now. And so 6 rows is what we're going to need. We're going to need to add an extra column here now so that we have stuff that goes on the left. That will be our pitcher qualities. And on the right, we have our batting qualities, right? Now, these are really huge. It's like right now, if I go in here and I try to type in something like struggler, that does not fit, okay? And we know we're going to have to mess with the fonts. We do know that already. But I think one of the things we can do right off the bat, I think, is we can change the size of stuff. So let's do something a little bit better, maybe a 9 at this point. This is going to allow us then to kind of shrink this down a little bit. And we're still not going to be able to get Struggler in there. We'll talk about how to get Struggler in there in a little bit. All right. We are going to also do some... we want to make sure that everything on this side is aligned to the left. That's fine. We're good there. Oops, I just centered it. And over here, we want to make sure that it's center or right aligned instead. That way, if we type in something like champion, it's aligned the correct way, right? Okay. All right. Then we want to have another one of these grids. And actually, well, we're gonna have to let's get everything lined up here instead. We're kind of doing this all Mickey Mouse here, and that's not a good thing. All right. So on this one, yeah. Yeah, we want to make sure that we add 3 here and 2 here. So the reason we want 3 and 2, there we go. We want 3 and 2, and let's set the whole grid to like something like 8. 8 is going to be probably big at this point, but once we start messing with fonts and stuff, we'll see how to do this a little bit better. But in here, we're going to want to do things like fielding. And we want to do speed, actually experience. And right now we can't get all of them in. And the reason I'm doing them in lowercase will become evident a little bit later. You'll see why we are doing it in lowercase. Actually, with these, well, we can probably get away with doing it in uppercase here. Hang on. We'll make those longer later. Don't worry about that right now. Okay? The one thing we do want to worry about is that alignment set correctly. This is going to be centered. And these are going to be right aligned. Okay? And there we go. All right. So we have pretty much everything we need here. Oh, we do need one more of these. I'm just going to copy this. Oh, actually, we'll do it this way. We'll just do a new one. So we're going to need another one of these. This one is going to be for batting and throwing. We're going to do it by 4. And I'm just going to leave this here for now as is. We'll go through this and set the fonts as we go. So we got a lot of stuff in here, and it kind of looks like, oh boy, this is kind of messed up. This doesn't look like a very good card right now, basically is what I'm saying. But we now have everything out there. So once we have everything out there, we can start styling things and changing things and making it look pretty. Okay? That's what we're going to do next. Okay? So we have everything that the card needs on here. We don't need any more information out here. So first of all, let's talk about the... Actually, let's save those for last. Yeah, actually, let's do these now. All right, so we're going to change the font to the city name and team nicknames, okay? So we can change those. So what I like to do with fonts on cards is, in general, I'm going to use a lot of condensed fonts, and I'm going to use sans serif fonts, basically. Sans serif meaning that they don't have the extra decorations on each character. So they're just standard characters without any decoration on them. Okay, they are more readable that way, and they look sharp if you do them right. Now, what I usually use is a font called Open Sans. You can use whatever fonts you want for this. And make the cards look the way you want them to. This is how I make my cards look the way I want them to. This is totally a style decision on your part. I'm just giving you what I do. You can choose whatever ones you want to. I use a lot of fonts from Google. Google has a lot of free fonts out there that you can get. Open Sans is one of them. Open Sans Condense is another one that we'll be using. So Open Sans is what we're going to use on this one. We're not going to use a condensed version on the city name, and you can see it just disappeared because this got pretty big, right? And we're going to keep it at 12. We are going to set this to extra bold. And what we want to do here is test a few city names in here, some really big ones like San Francisco. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. If you can get San Francisco to fit in there, that's usually good. And then I'm just going to put this back to city name then. So, okay. All right, so that looks really good. Okay, so that looks bold, looks like something that commands some attention, and so you really know what it looks like, right? Let's do this one as well. We're going to do basically the same exact settings. We're just going to do Open Sans. And it's going to disappear again because, yeah, we've got this set to too small. There we go. All right. And here we can call this, we can try test some long ones here. A good one for this one. If you get Diamondbacks in there, you're good to go. Okay. So we'll set that in there, team nickname. Okay. All right. This looks absolutely huge right now on this, so we're going to make some changes to this. Let's change, actually let's do this one first. So as I said before, we want to use, if possible, some condensed fonts. So there's Open Sans Condensed. We're going to use that for this, and we're going to hit bold here. And all of a sudden, look at this, we can actually fit Struggler, and we can fit it, and in here we could fit a semi-quality as well. Okay. So these are all good to go. We can set these. These are going to be no problem whatsoever for us. Okay. If it's a picture, so we can do picture qualities here. We could do, it could be star and flash and control. And I apologize for the coughing in the background. That's my wife. She's been having some real issues with her asthma and stuff lately. Okay, and then over here maybe we can do like hero and possibly a slugger. This is just kind of giving you some examples of what some of the data might look like in here. And patient and good eye. Okay, all good to go, right? Okay. So you can see here that this, we can actually play with this a little bit. We can change the size of this maybe. We can condense it a little bit if we need to. 9 point is really a good size for this. If you've seen play games, cards, a lot of times the qualities get set to a really small size, especially on like baseball. The baseball cards usually get set to a really small size. 9 is actually going to be kind of big. It'll show up nice and solid on the card. 10, if you can get 10 in there, like we'll try 10. Actually, 10 I think would be fine. Let's see if we can get away with 10. We'll see where that goes to. Okay. And actually, this will work here with this then, where we're going to set this one now too. So we're going to set this again to Open Sans Condensed. Again, we're going to go with bold here again. And we're going to do 8 point. And we can set this here to fielding. We can set this to experience. And we still don't have enough room for that, so speed is the other one. We can actually change these a little bit here. So we don't need all of this room for fielding. We don't need all this room for speed. So we can set those a little bit further apart. And fielding we can set here. We can set that to gold, and we can set this to icon or prospect or whatever. And for speed, we can set this to like active. I like to test like the longest value sometimes, so we could say, oh yeah, it's DB active. Does DB active fit in there? Okay, that's fine. We don't need to worry about it then at that point, right? Can I fit like a semi-prospect in here? Oops. Yeah, along with any kind of a thing there, we're good to go with that. Okay. So this all gets set. We're all good to go there. Now, one thing here, this is something new that I've been doing a lot lately, which has worked out really well. And that is setting these field names to a different color. So things like fielding, experience, speed, stuff like that, these are not essential pieces of data. We don't really care about them when we look at a card. We care about the values that are below them. So I like to de-emphasize those, and a good way to de-emphasize those is just to set the color of them. So here you can see here where I just set that color to a gray, and that goes a long way to de-emphasize those. And you can see here now that they kind of disappear in the background. They're still there, they're still useful, but they kind of disappeared a little bit. Okay. All right, so in here, also the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to select all of the fields, and up here you're going to see a thing that says stroke up here. We're going to change this, we're going to select all, and then we're going to change this, and we're just going to hit this little no line style. That is going to get rid of all the lines. So now we no longer have any lines. Okay, and that makes that look a little bit cleaner. We're going to do this again here as well. We're going to do the exact same thing. So as you can see here, we are going to select all of the fields. We're going to come up here to stroke. We're going to select all. And we could do it this way too. We can just set that to none like that. That also works as well. That will get rid of all of it. Okay. So now we have that as well. All right, so let's do this one. And again, let's start at 8 with this. Oops. Equal sign is not going to give us a good font. We're going to do Open Sans Condensed. This one we're going to go a little bit different on though. I'm going to go bold again on this, but I'm also going to do I'm going to do a little bit something different on the font. So if we go over to character here, next to layers, I can set in here this to be small caps. And the reason we want to set this to small caps is that we can do something like this. So now we can go in here to the individual item in here. So we can do the first one, we can say throws. So all of that is in a lowercase characters. You can see that auto-corrected that first character, so I'm just going to change it back to a lowercase character, and it gives us a little bit different dynamic. It's still 8-point characters, but it's all lowercase, but it looks uppercase. So it kind of gives us this really unique look to it. I will do bats as well here. So bats, and again you can see it got auto-corrected to go to capital. We just select that. And then these two fields here, I'm going to just set the alignment to be right aligned for both of these, so that they align right up against the edge there. These here, I'm going to set these to align to left align, and we're going to just say here, we're going to just say right and right as well here. This one will have to change the alignment there, and there you go. That is all you need to do for that. We do need to select these four, actually. We need to select all here, and again, just get rid of the lines. Okay. There we go. So now we have all of that figured out as far as it looks good. Okay, it doesn't look horrible. Let's set our position. So we're going to do the same thing on the position we did with the throws right and bats right, and this is just an aesthetic thing for me. You can set position however you want on your cards. You can spell it out. You can use the abbreviations. You can do whatever you want. This is just to get your creative juices flowing here. Okay, that's all we're doing here. But here we're going to set this also to small caps again. I'm also going to do this on name as well right now, just to get this out of the way, because I'm going to do it there as well. All right, so on position here, we're just going to use lowercase characters, and we can say something like, we're going to use one that's probably going to be the longest one, to be starting pitcher. Starting pitcher fits, we're good to go, right? Okay, And as you can see here, we used all lowercase characters. What just happened here? Hang on a second. Okay, that's not good. What the heck? Oh, let's see here. We're sitting layers. That is weird. We're having some problems with this actually malfunctioning. All right, we're going to quick save this. All right, we're just going to save this as template. And I'm going to exit out. Sometimes Affinity does this where it just gets really weird. And all we need to do is just shut it down and restart it. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Sometimes it gets kind of wonky like that. I'm not going to do a restart of this video just to kind of cover that. You can see that this happens sometimes. This is just the best way to do this. I did lose that, so we'll have to reset that. That's fine. All right. Let's see, character, we'll set that to small. And as you can see here, it auto-corrected here. That's fine, we don't care about that. We're going to set this font to be, let's see here. Let's do this as Open Sans. And we're just going to set it to bold. And we'll set this to maybe 10-ish. That's probably about right. So it's nothing too huge. And you can see here, we can do stuff to de-emphasize that if we want to. All right. Oh yes, we're going to de-emphasize these as well while we're at it. So we're just going to change the color of these to be a gray instead. Okay. So using that de-emphasization. All right, so as I said earlier, we want to use the, we wanted to use a sans serif font for everything to make it more readable. The one exception that I usually take on this is the name. I usually use a serif font and use a condensed serif font to do that. The choice that actually is used by Play Games, so to make your cards look a little bit more like Play Games type cards, is something called Rockwell Nova. So you can see here Rockwell Nova. We can set this. There's a condensed version of this. We can go condensed bold, and there you go. And I'm gonna jack this up to about 16 as a font size. We're gonna have to expand this a little bit to get the whole thing in there. And I could put a really super long name in there. I don't know how to spell Yastrzemski, so we're not going to go with that one. I'll go with one for my Hockey North America League. We can go with Connell Walchuk. Connell Walchuk can fit in there. I think pretty much anything is going to fit in there pretty good. Okay, it does. We can set this back to last name. Okay, all right. We're going to use that same font, that Rockwell Nova. And again, we're going to use the bold. But on this one, we're actually going to probably go down to an 11. So 11 to 16, and you can see the difference in size here, right? Okay. So we're getting closer. We have everything kind of figured out as far as the size is concerned, and we actually got a fairly good balance of elements in the card here. It all looks pretty good, but I don't know, it just still doesn't look right, okay? We need to break this card up a bit. So let's talk about how we're going to break this card up, okay? So we can use lines to help us out. So we can use this pen tool. This is a good way to do lines. Let's just set a line up here, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to click once. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. As you can see, I get a straight line going out there. If I click again, keeping that Shift key held, there we go. We have a straight line. If we don't hold the Shift key, then it's going to go all over the place, and you're not going to have a straight line. And you're going to try to fix it, and it's not going to work out right. Hold the Shift key down, you get a straight line. Okay, we're going to select that line. Okay, make sure it's centered and looks like it's in line with everything on this card. Okay, so what we want to do here again, and you can see here, it's already gray. So that already is a huge win. Gray is good because we want the lines to be de-emphasized, but we also want them to split content up, and we want them to be a good width. So we're going to go to stroke here, and we're just going to increase this up to about 1.5 or so. 1.5 is really solid looking. It's a big, nice, solid line, and it makes a big difference here. So what we're going to do here, I'm actually going to move this up a bit for right now. We're just going to kind of move things up as we go here. I want to set this line up so that what I'm going to do, and I do this by sight. You can do this actually by measuring and using all the measuring tools that are in this program, but I do everything in my cards by sight. Okay, so I'm going to look here. I want to try to get the margin between the top this line and the bottom of the card to be roughly the same between the two ends of the cards and the edges of the cards on the edge of the cards on this side. So edge of the line, edge of the card, bottom of the line to the bottom of the card. Those should be roughly equal, and it looks about equal there. So we're just going to move that team nickname down just a bit. And then we're going to take that line and we're just going to copy it again. I'm going to move it up, and there we go. I can now separate that team nickname from everything else. Okay, now I can take this grid, and I want to separate this grid out too, so I'm going to just do another paste. So pasting another line out. And there we go. So now we've got that split out. Okay, well, this is really kind of just butted up here, so we're going to move this up just a bit. Let's put another line in there. We can move this to the top of this. Okay. And we can center this better in between these two lines. We can move this down just a scotch. Move this down just a scotch. And let's throw another line up there. As you can see, I'm just using these lines to separate the different content in different parts of the page. Now I have the last name here. I have the first name here. Okay, let's do another line. So we're going to paste another line out there. We're going to drag it up there above the name. And actually we're going to do this one this way again. So we're going to move city name down just a bit while I get this one set up like the one I did at the bottom. Again, trying to get it set up somewhat that it looks like it's, you know, even all the way around. I'm going to move the city name up just a bit, and we're going to paste another one here. And this will take a little bit of work just to kind of get it to feel right, you know. But once you do, you're kind of set, and there you go. You kind of have a nicer looking card there. So we've used the grays to de-emphasize different parts of the card, and we've used the blacks to highlight everything. So we didn't use any color in this card. and we've made it look like a decent card that could be used for our player cards. This is going to be our base card. We're going to actually take this card later on. We're going to copy and paste it. But first we need to do one other thing to make this really easy to use. Okay? We're going to start naming things in here. We're going to actually start doing what we call grouping. So we have this whole card here, all of these different items in this card here. We're going to select everything, and you can see in the layer diagram here, everything got selected as well. And we're going to just do a click on there, a right click, and we're going to select group. This is now all in a group. We're going to call this player card. So we can name our different layers in here, and we can group them as well. So now I can just copy and paste this whole card as one big piece. This is one piece now. Okay, so when we put this into our data merge later on, we can do it as one thing. But let's also arrange things in here to make this a little bit easier to use. So we have all these curves we added, all these nice lines we headed. What if we wanted to style all of these lines together? That would be pretty awesome if we could do that, right? So we can take all those curves that we added. The curves are those straight lines essentially. Let's group those together. And we'll set a name to these. We'll call these the division lines. And what's really cool is now that I have division lines set up here, theoretically I could go in here and I could actually change the color of these. So let's say I wanted to make them red or something like that. All of the lines just turn red with one click. I didn't have to do anything. And it's not really red, it's pink, but hot pink to be honest. But you can see here, that was very easy to set all of those very quickly because we grouped them. Okay. And I need to click, select these and then do that. There we go. Okay. So that's all you need to do. Makes it very simple to do. All right. So we can also group other things together. We could group maybe the name together. So we have first name and last name. We could group those together if we wanted to, or just keep them together. I like naming my fields. And let's see here. Position and I usually group these two together, the city name and team nickname, because on some cards when I do coloring, I will usually do the city name and team nickname may be different from everything else on the card. So I may want to do those differently. So I may group these together and just say team names. Okay. I could throw everything else together. I could put the grids here. So this grid is could just call it lefty righty. We call this one the sub abilities. And this one we could call this main abilities. Okay, make it really simple. Background, there you go. So we have everything set on there. We have names, we have grouped everything together, and we're all set. We got everything we need to do in order to put this into our data merge. So the next video we're going to talk about how to do that data merge, how to make all of that work together. And the last video, we'll do probably a third video where we'll talk a little bit about some styling, some post-production work you can do with what you get as part of your data merge. So we'll do that in the next video. Thank you all for watching this. Again, if you like this, subscribe and all that, like the video, leave comments or whatever if you have any comments about this or have any specific questions. But highly recommend you look for Affinity Publisher, get this and start playing around with it and making your own cards. And we'll see you all in the next video. Thank you all for watching.